All right, I made a mistake here. This is going to be part two of part two. Unfortunately, part two is going to have to be in two parts because I pushed the wrong button on this thing. March 9th, NASA announces that the searchers have found the remains of Challenger astronauts. March 26th, Geffen Records signs the band Guns N' Roses. April 8th, Clint Eastwood is elected mayor of Carmel, California. I remember that. April 14th, Desmond Tutu is elected the Anglican Archbishop of Cape Town. April 20th, Michael Jordan sets NBA playoff record with 63 points in a game. May 1st, Billy Elliott sets the stock car speed record at 212.23 miles per hour. Same day, Will Steger's expedition reaches the North Pole. May 16th, the film Top Gun, directed by Tony Scott and starring Tom Cruise, premieres. June 24th, Guy Hunt is elected the first Republican governor of Alabama in 112 years. July 5th, Nancy Reagan cuts a red, white, and blue ribbon to reopen the Statue of Liberty after its refurbishment. I remember that. July 18th, videotapes are released which show the Titanic's sunken remains. First NFL American exhibition game takes place in Wembley Stadium, in which the Chicago Bears defeat the Dallas Cowboys 17-6. That was August 3rd. August 15th, President Reagan decides to support a replacement for Challenger. August 16th, Madonna's album True Blue goes to #1 for 5 weeks. 19 August 22nd, film Stand By Me by Stephen King is released. September 7th, Cleveland Browns become the first team in NFL history to have their play reviewed by instant replay. Yeah, I remember instant replay. In a lot of ways, I still don't like it, but with the way these officials are officiating these games, it's a must. It's needed, unfortunately. Don't like the way it prolongs a game. September 7th, Dan Marino throws his 100th career touchdown pass, the fastest quarterback in NFL history to ever do so. September 8th, debut of Oprah Winfrey Show. November 13th, NASA launches space vehicle S-199. November 22nd, Mike Tyson, at 20 years old, becomes the youngest heavyweight champion in history when he stops Trevor Berbick in the second round to earn the WBC title at the Las Vegas Tilton. November 29th, British-born American actor Cary Grant dies at the age of 82 from cerebral hemorrhage. Moving on to 1987, January 3rd, Aretha Franklin becomes the first female artist to be inducted into Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. January 11th, the NFL Largest crowd at the New York Giants Stadium is recorded. Total of 76,663 fans attended. January 25th, New York Giants beat the Denver Broncos 39-20 in the Super Bowl at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California. January 29th, William J. Casey's term as 13th Director of CIA ends, succeeded by Charles W. Robinson. February 6th, no smoking rule in U.S. federal buildings takes effect. February 7th, Madonna's single Open Your Heart goes to number 1. February 24th, Larry King suffers a heart attack. February 26th, Michael Jordan scores 58 points in one game. The Chicago Bulls record. March 12th, Les Miserables opens for over 4,000 performances at Broadway in Imperial, New York. April 12th, Texaco files for bankruptcy. April 16th, Michael Jordan becomes the second NBA player to score 3,000 points in one season. April 17th, Julius Erving becomes the third NBA player to score a total of 30,000 points. June 12th, President Reagan challenges Gorbachev to tear down the Berlin Wall in West Berlin. June 30th, the $1 coin is introduced by the Royal Canadian Mint. July 1st, WFAN AM, a New York radio station, starts the first 24-hour all-sports format. July 3rd, 2 men become the first hot air balloon travelers to cross the Atlantic Ocean. September 22nd, NFL players go on strike for 24 days. I remember that. I remember also they only didn't play for 1 week, and then the next week they signed scab players that had previously been with the team during the preseason and had not made the team before were playing. I remember going to Redskins' only scab game at home. December 8th, Ron Hextall, goalkeeper for the Philadelphia Flyers hockey team, becomes the first goalkeeper to score a goal. All right, and that brings us to 1988. January 11th, first U.S. test tube quintuplets are born in Royal Oak, Michigan. February 20th, Peter Calico purchases a New York Post from Rupert Murdoch for $37.6 million. February 25th, Bruce Springsteen's Tunnel of Love tour begins in Worcester, Massachusetts. June 3rd, a film directed by Penny Marshall, starring Tom Hanks, premieres in the United States called Big. June 25th, American Major League Baseball, Cal Ripken Jr. plays his 1,000th game. I remember that. June 25th, also, the cartoon Roger Rabbit debuts on Who Framed Roger Rabbit. June 27th, Mike Tyson holds on to the heavyweight crown as he knocks out Michael Spinks in 91 seconds into the first round of the championship fight at Lansing, New Jersey. I remember that. July 13th, singer and actor Sting performs at his first Rainforest benefit concert. July 14th, the American radio station WYHY offers $1 million to anyone who can prove Elvis Presley is still alive. Shooting begins on the James Bond film License to Kill. That was July 18th. December 20th, first African American network television announcer Max Robinson dies of AIDS at the age of 49. I remember him being in D.C. area, and I believe moving to Chicago. December 21st, one of the most shocking events on this 1988 timeline, Pan American Flight 103 is downed over the town of Lockerbie, Scotland by a terrorist bomb, killing 270 people. Christmas services were held to mourn the loss of 270 people. Yes, I remember being in Scotland and our tour bus going by the site of where that plane crash happened. Terrible. And last of all, we were in the year 1989. January 20th, George H.W. Bush is sworn in to become the 41st President of the United States. He defeated Michael Dukakis, I remember that. January 23rd, Spanish artist Salvador Dali dies at 84. January 24th, America's most infamous serial killer, Ted Bundy, is put to death by electric chair in the state of Florida. February 16th, investigations into the Lockerbie bombing of 1988 reveal that the Pan Am Flight 103 was caused by a bomb concealed within a cassette player. February 24th, Japan's late Emperor Hirohito's state funeral takes place. The formal event is attended by many world leaders, including current President George H. Bush, who attends as part of his second international state visit as president. March 1st, I had not heard of this one, but Iceland's beer prohibition, which had been in place since 1st of January of 1915, ends. March 29th, Oscar for the Best Picture is awarded to Rain Man, with Three Further Gongs, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, also wins 4 of the coveted trophies. April 25th, Motorola launches the world's smallest mobile phone. Micro TAC is designed to fit in a shirt pocket, weighing 12.3 ounces and measuring 9 inches. The average price for the cell phone is $3,000. I remember about the only people you'd see carrying cell phones back then would be rich people like doctors or lawyers. June 2nd, Dead Poets Society starring Robin Williams is released in the United States. June 13th, Timothy Dalton appears for second role as James Bond in License to Kill, which premieres in Leicester Square, London. June 16th, highly anticipated sequel Ghostbusters is released in the United States. I didn't even see anything about the first one, but that was definitely a memory from the 1980s, the Ghostbuster movie. July 19th, I remember this one, the rear engine of a United States Airline Flight 233 fails, leading to a crash landing in Sioux City, Iowa. 112 of the 296 on board are killed. The pilot did a great job of saving as many people as he possibly could. It's kind of interesting. I believe the airplane broke into 3 parts, and the cockpit was completely off of the plane. They were working on rescuing survivors, and they didn't think anybody. They ignored the cockpit. They didn't think anybody survived until somebody put their hand out the window and waved it, and then they came over and rescued the pilots. July 31st, North Americans can now purchase Nintendo's portable video game system, Game Boy. Handheld console can be purchased for $89.99. December 17th, America is introduced to the iconic Simpsons family as the first episode makes its premiere. Yep, I remember when that show came out. And that concludes my summary of the 1980s, the Al Franken decade. I mean, you remember Saturday Night Live, and Al Franken was a writer for that show, and he would appear on their Weekend Update and say, because of me, Al Franken, his name would appear on the screen every time he'd say his name. You're doing it for me, Al Franken. So these 10 years will be the Al Franken decade. I'm going to go ahead and search for the Super Bowl history of that decade, who won the Super Bowls. That's what I said I was going to do. All right, first Super Bowl of the 1980s, the 1980 Super Bowl. Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Los Angeles Rams 31-19. MVP was Terry Bradshaw. I'm actually going to do the place where they were played instead of who the MVPs were. First one I mentioned was played at the Rose Bowl. 1981, Oakland beat Philadelphia 27-10. It was played in New Orleans. I remember that. I was actually thinking about trying to go to that Super Bowl. It didn't happen. To a lot of money back then. A ticket would have been about $200, which back then that was a lot of money. I mean, now that wouldn't, for a Super Bowl, that would be nothing. I don't think you could even get a ticket for a Super Bowl now for $200. I'm sure you couldn't get one ticket to any Super Bowl for less than $1,000. That would be what I would imagine. 1982, San Francisco beat Cincinnati in the Silver Dome in Pontiac, Michigan. And I remember that game. Rose Bowl, 1983. Redskins beat the Dolphins 27-17 in Pasadena, California. Yes, I do remember that game. 4th and 1. John Riggins ran the rest of the way for a touchdown. I think that was kind of the turning point of that game. Next year, Redskins had a season where they only lost 2 games, both by 1 point. Ended up getting wiped out by the Los Angeles Raiders 38-9 in Tampa Stadium. Next year, another wipeout. 49ers beat the Dolphins 38-16 in Stanford Stadium. The Superdome in New Orleans, Chicago beat New England 46-10. That was the first time in, I think, 20 years that the Patriots were finally able to win in Miami. They won in that championship game over the Dolphins, and Dolphins are probably a team that were favored to play the Bears in that Super Bowl. As a matter of fact, the Bears only lost 1 game that year, and that was to the Miami Dolphins. 1987 at the Rose Bowl again, New York Giants beat the Denver Broncos 39-20. 1988 at Jack Murphy Stadium in San Diego, Washington beat Denver 42-10. I remember that Redskins and Broncos. Broncos were leading 10-0 at the end of the first quarter. The Redskins scored 35 points in the second quarter. It was a big game. Probably a career game for Doug Williams. Probably the best game of his career. Joe Robbie Stadium in Miami. the 49ers beat the Bengals 20-16. Another one of those games. But that's I'll go ahead and do the next one too, 1990, because that's the end of the 1989 season at the Superdome in New Orleans. San Francisco beat Denver 55-10. That was another wipeout in the Super Bowl. But yeah, a lot of memories. One of the things I remember about football back in the 1980s, you didn't seem to have all these officials helping rig games that I personally think happens like a lot of other people. You know, it's like I just want to say right now, that's my opinion. That's the way I look at it. I pretty much stopped watching professional sports altogether because of that nonsense. But anyway, I thought football was better to watch back then in the NFL, and it was definitely really good in the 70s. And trying to think, going just some personal memories myself. That decade, 1980, I graduated high school. It was a sucky year for me, 1980. I was glad when that year was over. But I trying to think what all went on in 1980. Memory's kind of fuzzy. 1981, much a better year. I hardly remember what I did in those years. 1982, we made a trip to Missouri for the first time since we had come back to the United States in 1976. Visited family. 1983, I went back to Missouri again the next year by myself and visited relatives. I remember 1982, went to my first professional baseball game. That was in St. Louis. They lost to Pittsburgh Pirates in 17 innings. The first game I went to went into 17 innings. I believe next month I went to my first Orioles baseball game, which was one of many that I went to. 84, started working in retail. 1985, made a trip to California, flew out to San Francisco. 1986. Not much memories from that year. 87, another sucky year. I did go to Chicago though and visit there for 2 weeks. That was fun. I went to Cubs and Yankees, or Cubs and White Sox games back to back in one day. And Fred and I actually did that in, I believe, 1984, 85, when we saw a Mets game during the day and we saw a Yankees game at night. So did do that twice in my time. That was a fun experience going to Chicago. The rest of the year sucked, and the job I had, in 1988 started out that way too. I finally got a different job, and then I got an even better one in September that year. I remember June of 1988, I took a trip to California, flew into Los Angeles, and was visiting relatives that lived in West Covina. And 1989, I bought a Plymouth Horizon. I remember that year. It was kind of interesting during most of the winter, January and February. It's temperatures would reach the 60s and 70s every day, and I remember March we actually hit 90 degrees for 2 days. I remember early April we had a snowstorm. Kind of interesting. Unusual to get snow in April in Northern Virginia, but those are memories I have. One of the things that did not come up in the memories in that chronicle, at least not that I saw, was a premiere of that movie Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I really liked that movie. I thought it was funniest scene was that when Sean Penn ordered pizza in the classroom. That was a classic. Had the movie 16 Candles. Remember that one too? That was another good one. Trying to think back on what else I can remember from the 80s. Of course, you had the Pac-Mans and the Galaga games. Never played Galaga. I did play Pac-Man quite a bit. I was working in a movie theater and with a Pac-Man game, so I blew a lot of quarters playing Pac-Man on my break. Oh, I remember movie Rocky 3 one summer. I seen that movie over and over again. Really liked it. You could see it for free because I worked at the movie theater, so those were fun times. Brother and I would keep going to it over and over again. Great movie. Oh, I remember 1987 going to that one Scab game at RFK Stadium. That was a fun experience. The first time I saw him play the St. Louis Cardinals. Oh, and I remember that year too, that decade. I think it was 84. The Colts left Baltimore. That sucked because I was a fan of the Colts and the Cardinals, and I think 1988 maybe the Cardinals left St. Louis. Oh man, that was a sucky decade for teams. My two football teams leaving places. Baltimore finally got the Ravens in the 1990s, but it was a long wait. And so basically, the 1980s, some years sucked, some were good. I told you 2 years that really sucked, especially 1987. That was one of the worst years I ever had. But anyway, that's what I can think of on memories of the 1980s. I hope you enjoyed this, and the video that I inspired this was one that I saw on YouTube, Our 80s Life. That's what it's called. And this couple apparently tries to live every day like it was in the 80s. They really have a liking. I can't say I like the 80s as much as they liked it, nor would I want to go back in time to the 1980s. But there were some things. Oh, I remember too. Madonna was very popular in the 1980s. You had New Wave, Blondie. I remember that. But I'm sure other memories will come along. But anyway, I very much enjoyed doing this video. This is one of the longest ones I've done in quite a while, but that's what inspired me. And looking for ideas on shows to do in the future. My show is about preserving history, especially obscure aspects of history. With that being said, like, subscribe, share. As always, thanks for watching.